Now let's go a little bit further with viewports and take a look at how to configure our viewports. Now viewports in 3ds Max each have their own controls. So if I go out here to my 4 view, you'll see that each one of these has 4 menus. So I'm going to go back into my perspective view here and let's go through some of these menus. This plus menu allows us to restore a viewport or make the viewport active. We can also disable a viewport. In addition to this, we can turn on or off grids and manipulate both the view cube and the steering wheels. This is also where we will create previews. So if we want to preview an animation, we can do that here. Now the next menu determines what we're seeing in the viewport. So in this case, we're seeing the perspective view, but we could change this to say a top or bottom view or a camera view, or we can do what's called extended viewports, which allows us to see things such as the track view or the scene explorer in this viewport. Now in addition to this, we can turn on or off safe frames, and the hotkey for that is Shift F. So if I do F for a frame or a safe frame, I can toggle that on or off. Now here we have the shading menu. Now I have this set by default on standard, which basically just shows the materials without any fancy lighting. Now we can go up in quality to high quality rendering here. And as you can see, this gets something that's fairly close to a rendered view. Or we can go down in quality. We can go to what's called a performance mode, which allows us to see things in shaded mode without any of the materials, textures, or lighting. And this can be really nice for modeling, or if your scene is very complex, this can increase performance. Now, if you have a DirectX card in your system, we can go into DX mode. And notice how this is very similar to realistic mode, but it also has some additional stuff. So notice how the metal is showing up a little bit better in this mode. Now I'm going to go back to high quality mode. And then let's take a look at some of these other menus. We have lighting and shadows. So we can either illuminate with our default lights, which are the lights that 3ds Max provides if there are no lights in the scene, or we can illuminate with our scene lights, which is what we're doing here. Now we can also turn shadows on or off, and we can also turn ambient occlusion on or off. So when it's on, notice how we're getting these shadows kind of in the corners, and that's ambient occlusion. And what this is just kind of that soft lighting that you get naturally in a scene. Now, in addition to this, we can change the type of shading. By default, we have what's called default shading. We can change this to facets. In fact, I'm going to go into standard view here so we can see this a little bit better. We can go into bounding box mode, which shows just the bounding boxes. We can do what's called flat color mode. We can also do some stylized mode. We can do what's called a clay mode, which is very similar to the performance mode. But we also can do stylized mode. So if we do graphite, you can see it kind of stylizes this to look like any one of these looks. So if we want to do acrylic and so on. But typically I'm going to keep this at default shading. And now we can also do what's called edged faces, which shows the wires on our scene. And we can also turn on wireframe override, which will just give us a wireframe view. Now I'm going to go back to high quality. And as you can see, edge faces will show up in almost any view. Now, if we want, we can also go to viewport global settings, and this will give us controls over all of our viewports. So in viewport configuration, we can change our display performance, so we can improve our quality progressively, which means that it will continue to improve the quality as it kind of sits on the screen. And this allows you to manipulate and orbit the scene very, very quickly. We can also change our adaptive degradation, which again will change the speed of the scene. And we can also change the anti-aliasing quality. So if we want, we can increase anti-aliasing to get a better image in the viewport. Now we can also change things such as the background color. Do we want a gradient or a solid color, or the environment? And then our standard layout of viewports, which is exactly the same as this button here. We can change where the safe frames are located. So if we want to modify that, we can. And then we can also turn on or off statistics within the window. So if we want to, we can turn on things such as polygon count. So if we're modeling, we can understand how many polygons we're working with. And then we also have controls for our view cube and our steering wheels. So there are a lot of ways to control and configure your viewports in 3ds Max. So go ahead and familiarize yourself with these methods.